Hey guys, in this video we'll be continuing with the Python video series. We'll be going over two-dimensional lists. So in Python, basically so as you know, a list is basically an array with some extra features, such as like negative indexes and all that. In Python, again, you can have any type in the list. You can fill a list with different types. In other languages you can't. You can only have one type for most languages. So basically a two-dimensional list, if you guessed, it's basically a 2D array. Well, yeah, if it's a list is just a 1D. It's like a 1D array, and a 2D list is like a 2D array. So basically a 2D list is a list that has other lists as its elements. So it's so the way it works is that you basically have rows and columns. But the thing is, you have to print it out with a special way, I believe. There's a special way to print it to show that, or else it just prints everything in one line. But basically each array index, or sorry, each list index, if I said array, forgive me, but each list index has its own array. Sorry, my bad. Each list's index has its own list. So imagine having a list, like if we have list 1 points to some list, but the thing is, we'll have, so imagine having an index here, like we have some kind of value, right? But imagine this. Instead of that value, like if we have a bunch of values like this, 3, 4, 5, 6, if we have some value here like this, we have values in here, just single values. But imagine we want to put something like, imagine we have this, like instead we have another list inside here with its own values, and then this index has its own list with some kind of values in it. However you spell veggies, like something like that. So each index has its own list in it. That's basically what it is. But the thing is, it's not supposed to be shown like that. It's supposed to be like a matrix. Like I don't know if anybody, I don't really know what a matrix is, but it's I don't know how to explain it that well. But it's basically like a box. So you have rows and columns. So let me try to, I think I did one example code on this. I'll try to make it a bit more clear here. So we have, so just on with the description, the elements of a list can be anything basically, including other lists. Let's just do an example here. So we can have so there'll be a bunch of examples. It'll take a while to explain it, so we'll just go with that. So we have students. Let's just say we have students list points to So basically, there's different ways to look at them. This is one way where it's all in one line. So let's say we have like some strings here. So we have like some dude named Frank or something. So again, in this index 0, we also have maybe like some girl named Kimmy or something, whatever. So we have two strings in the first index 0, basically its own list. So index 0 is its own list, and we'll have a comma, and then index 1 will have its own list again. So some other strings, whatever you want, like some random things. So we have one string in there, and a string literal comma will have something else, like something else in there. So we have basically a list for index 0, another list for index 1, all in its own list. Then we'll have maybe another final index, like okay, so another list, and we'll just have another string or two, and then we'll have something else like alright, so that's pretty much it. So we have basically, we have a list here. We have it's a 2D list. In this case, we have each index is its own list. So if we print this, so we can say print students list. So you can print students list like that. So let's just print that first. So again, we have, so this isn't the best way to actually write them. There's different ways to print them. There's actually a trick in there. I may have to find it because I'm not sure if I have it in these notes I'm looking at, but it's pretty much across every language. It's the same thing. You have to put a special space in there with a special print line. I'll show you guys how to do that. You have to do it in a loop. Because notice if we printed it out, like this, just print the list, it just prints everything out in one line. So this Frank, Kimmy should actually be on the top, blueberries and tuna should be below that, chicken and shrimp should actually be below that. Then it looks more like a box of 2x2 or 3x2. It looks like a 3x2 box. That's how it should be, like a 3x2 list. So just another thing here, we can actually print an index. We'll get onto that in a sec, the 3x2 kind of stuff. So I'll show you guys that in a sec. So if we have, so here if we have print, we'll print students of, so students list of list index 0. Save that, print it. You can see we got index 0 here, Frank and Kimmy. Of our 2D list, we got index 0 of our 2D list, which is actually its own list. So if we can go on to this, we can print out, we'll just copy and code reuse, we'll just copy and paste it here. So we'll just 0, 1, 2, we'll print out index 0, 1, and 2. So you can see that's how the list really should be printed when we want to print it. So if we just remove the top part and we print that, then that's what the 2D list really should be. So I'll explain that in one sec. It's kind of confusing. So just a bit more on this. Line 1 creates a list and assigns different people to the students list. The list has 3 elements, and each element is also a list, so that's another way to look at it. Or you could just say each index is its own list, whatever you want. So lists of lists are also known as nested lists. So you can, in Python they call them nested lists. You could also call them 2D lists, is probably the easiest way to go about it. So it is common to think of a 2D list as having rows and columns of elements. So that's what I was trying to explain before. We have rows and columns. So if I can just show an example of this. So basically, So column, so again, rows go down top to bottom. So this is, so if you look on the output, if you guys can see that, hopefully. Let's try to move that up here. So if you guys can see this, hopefully you guys can see that. So pretty much we have, that may actually be too big, but that's okay. So we have the rows going down top to bottom. So this is row 0. So Frank and Kimmy are in row 0. Blueberries and tuna are in row 1. So it's the same thing, they start at 0. Top to bottom and 0 left to right. So rows are top to bottom, columns are left to right. So on row 1 we have blueberries and tuna. On row 2 we have chicken and shrimp. So in column 0 we have Frank. Sorry. So yeah. So it might be a little bit confusing to remember. Even sometimes I still forget. And I've been coding since like 2015. So pretty much just, you may just have to note it down. Maybe some kind of mnemonic to remember it, some kind of saying you can remember. So rows top to bottom, columns left to right. It's kind of the opposite of rows, because if you think of rows left and right, you could say, well, rows goes with right, but it's actually the opposite, so rows go up and down. I don't know, something like that. So pretty much, so we have Frank and Kimmy in row 0, but in column 0, which go up and down. Sorry, I think I'm confusing people. Sorry. So we have row 0 going left to right. So this is so the thing is, rows go down, but rows. So this is row 0, row 1. Oh, can't highlight it. So row 0 is on the top. Row 1 is the middle index, and the last index on the bottom is row 2. Now column 0 is Frank, blueberries, and chicken. So it's left. So it's the columns go left to right, the rows go up and down. So here we have in column 0 Frank, blueberries, and chicken. And in column 1 we have Kimmy's tuna and shrimp, or Kimmy tuna and shrimp. So yeah, so that hopefully that makes sense. Maybe I should just shorten this a little bit to make it fit, so you guys can see it a little bit better. So I'll just rerun that. So hopefully now you can see that we just have 2 columns, right? They go left to right and rows go down. We have Frank on the top, berries and chicken in column 0, and we have Kimmy, tuna, and shrimp in column 2. In column 1. So column 0 and column 1. And then we have row 0, 1, and 2. So in this 2D array, we have 3 rows and 2 columns. So it's basically a 3 by 2 2D list. Forgive me if I said array by accident. So just a bit more on the description. Hopefully I'm not confusing anyone. So this basically this 2D list shows a 2D list that was created, that we just did. It's having 3 rows and 2 columns. Notice that the rows numbered 0, 1, and 2, and the columns are numbered 0 and 1. There's a total of 6 elements in this list. We have 6 elements. 2 2D lists are useful for working with multiple sets of data. For example, suppose you're having some kind of, you're trying to group things. So like, let's say you have a grade averaging program or something for a teacher. The teacher has 3 students, and the students take 3 exams during the semester. One approach would be to create 3 separate lists, one for each student. Each of these lists would have 3 elements, one for each exam score. This approach would be harder. You would have to separately process each list. A better approach would be to use a 2D list with 3 rows, one for each student, and 3 columns, one for each exam score. So hopefully that makes sense. So basically we'll have an example here. So 2-dimensional lists. So we'll do a 2-dimensional list with 3 rows and 2 columns, which is basically exactly what we just did now. So there's another way to print it, and I'll show you guys how to do that. Or how to actually, not print it, but actually write the lists out. So when processing the data in a 2D list, basically it's just another way to write it. I prefer this way. It's a little different from other languages. Similar, but different. So you know, like in other languages you can, I don't know if you know other languages or not, but if I can try to explain. Basically you use these like, use these like, you can do an array, you can initialize an array like this in other languages. And you can like have that for the first row and columns, and you could have like another one here, and then you have like the third row like this. That's basically how you do it. So in Python you can do it similarly, except you don't use these things. And I think Python had it right, to be honest. Other ways to initialize arrays in other languages, you usually use a for loop, which is the easiest way if you're not using the these kind of symbols. But in Python we don't have these. We just use a square bracket. So I'll show you guys how to write those out. So we have, you need 2 subscripts, one for the rows and one for the columns. So the exact same thing here is what we can do is we put 2, what pycharm is going to automatically give you that last, so basically 2 square brackets on the end. We just want 1, but what we're going to do here is we just have like, so let's just say we have 1, 2, 3. I'll tag that one down to the bottom. pycharm doesn't do a very good job of setting these up. But if we have like 4, 5, 6. So actually you have to put commas here. Might be a little hard to remember. 4, 5, 6, and then we have 7, 8, 9 like that. And then finally, instead of the comma, we have that last square bracket on there, like that. So that's how you do it. That's looking more like a, even if we could do it like this, guess would that work? Looks better like that, to be honest. Let's see if we'll print that and it works. There's a special way to print it as well. Let's see. So no, it doesn't like that. Yeah, it doesn't like Python doesn't like that, so we have to keep it separated like that. There we go. So it printed it out in one line. Again, that's not the best way to print it out. So pretty much, just moving on from this. So the elements in row 1. So again we have this is basically this is our 2D list. It's exactly the same thing as before, we're just writing it out a different way. So what do we have before? We had if I can remember, we had Frank. I can't remember, to be honest. We have Kimmy. I can't even remember what we had before, so let's just fill this with some random strings. We had blueberries. I think we have more this time as well. So I'll just fill them with some random strings for you guys. So we have something in each index. Alright, so anything you guys want. So we'll just change the name to foods list, and then we'll print that. So it's exactly the same thing, we just have just a different way to basically initialize the list. This way looks better because you know you're doing a 2D list, I think. The syntax is a little different, but again, you can always use a for loop to initialize a list, so we'll probably do an example of that coming up in a sec. But basically, if you want to, so we can reference an index in a different way as well. So if we want to print foods list of list index 0, comma, actually there's no comma, I don't think, so 0, 0, that should work. And we take the initial print out, so now we just have this. We want to print out foods list of list index 0, 0. So it goes row, column, so row 0, column 0. We can also think of that. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Best way to go about 2D lists. So if we want to print out foods list of list index 0, 0 or row 0, column 0, we get Frank. Let's just pick a random one here. So we'll try to get that tomato. So it's row 1, column 0, 1, 2. So we want print out 1, foods list 1, 2, or row 1, column 2. That should give us tomato. So there you go, guys. That's how to pretty much print out different indexes in the list. We can pick something from the last one as well. So we want we want row 0, 1, 2. So we're getting to row 2, and then we want index column index 0, 1. So let's say we want salmon. So we want 0, 1, 2. Row 2 and column 0, 1, column 1. That should get us salmon. And there you go, guys. So that's pretty much how to do it. So that's like the best way how to work with lists. Well, there's other things that we'll probably go over. Well, let's just maybe see if we can just talk about this a little bit more here. So pretty much, we went over how to get the indexes in the middle of the list instead of just printing food. So again, we could just reference, so we can do this, or we can just reference food list of 2, I think. So in other languages you can't do that, I believe. If you initialize a 2D list, you can't just say, okay, well I want row 2, which will give you the whole list at row 2. In this case, you actually have to do it how we just did it. You have to use the second list index, but in Python you can. It's a little bit more lenient. So basically both things work. You'll have to play around with them. Best way to learn the code is just to play around with it. So that's pretty much it. So programs that process 2D lists do with nested loops, so we'll do that in the next example. Thanks for watching, guys. If you like the video and you learned something, you can like the channel, or you can like the video and subscribe to the channel for more programming and investing videos. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.